this week is all about foundation paper piecing. It's one of my favorite techniques to sew, and I love to share it with other people. I have found that over the years, a lot of people are weary of it. It looks too complicated, or they don't want to learn the steps. And I want to fix that. I want to make it so that everyone isn't scared of foundation paper piecing and embraces it the way that I do. Like I said, I make a lot of foundation paper piece products. And back of me, you'll see that this is one of the quilts that I've made. And the reason that I absolutely adore foundation paper piecing is because you get precision points. It takes a lot of the guesswork when you're piecing a normal quilt or fabrics together because you're sewing on lines. I'm going to show it all a little bit later. I'm going to actually do a demo so you guys will see exactly how I do it. But like I was saying, the reason that people do foundation paper piecing is because you get precision points. So like stars, if you look on the quilt back of me, those points are precise, and all those little strips are just perfectly pieced. So that's why I love it, and it's so relaxing for me. Once I start doing it, I just get into a flow, and it really takes me to some other place. I don't really have to think, which is really funny because I think most people, when they think of foundation paper piecing, they think about, oh my gosh, there's so much to remember, so much to make sure that you're putting the piece in the right place, but it's just so relaxing, and I want to share that with you. I'm going to undo the mystery of it, and I'm going to share my tips and tricks. I'm going to do that live demo, and I am going to show you some quilts that I have made with foundation paper piecing with some fabulous products that I have for you today. So without further ado, let's dive right in to foundation paper piecing. Okay, so let's talk about the tools that are required to make you successful with foundation paper piecing. Most of them you probably already have in your arsenal. You may need to pick up one or two, but I'll go over them and the reasons why I think they're helpful for foundation paper piecing. The first thing is I like to use cotton thread in both my spool and also in my bobbin when I do any piecing for quilting. So that's one thing that I do. And the next thing you're going to need is just a pair of scissors, your favorite sharp ones, a rotary cutter, some pins. Now I am a renegade when it comes to pins, but for foundation paper piecing, it's going to be very helpful for you if you pin your fabric because you're going to flip, and I'll explain all of that later, but your favorite pins, these are our cool pins that I love. And then you'll notice here that I have a rotary cutting mat set up, and then I also have a little travel iron, our little steamer, and additionally a little travel ironing. This is a wool mat here. Now when I do foundation paper piecing downstairs in my studio, my machine's set up and I do have an ironing station very close to my machine, but I have to stand up and then take a step and then do my ironing. And with foundation paper piecing, every time you sew on one of those lines that I'll show you later, you're going to want to trim up and use your rotary cutter. So you're going to want to use your rotary cutter in a mat. So that's why it's right next to the machine here. And then on the other side, you're going to want to then iron open that seam. So I like to have my travel iron as well as a little mat there. So it's just easier for me to have travel items whenever I do foundation paper piecing, and I have them set up on either side of my sewing machine. And that way I don't have to get up. It keeps me relaxed, and it just makes things a little go more smoothly, and there's a flow to the whole system of foundation paper piecing. So you may want to do that. And then the next thing you're going to want to get is, if you don't already have an add a quarter ruler, these rulers are wonderful. They have a, let me see if you can see here, they have an edge here. So you can line things up to your seam and then you use it to cut and you get a perfect 1/4 inch away from your seam. And I'm going to be showing this later in a demo. So we have 2 sizes. We have the 6-inch and the 12-inch. Now the 12-inch is what I'll probably be using because I'm going to be showing a large foundation paper piece block that I'll be demoing later. But if you're just using a small square that you're working on, it's easier to use just the little 6-inch, at a 1/4. So there's 2 different options there. And then the next thing that you're going to want, and this definitely makes it easier, is the Quilter Select Fabric Glue Stick. And I love these things. They've got a little tint to them. They come off in the wash, so you don't have to worry about them staining or distorting anything. With this, we're going to be gluing our first piece of fabric down to the paper. It just makes it so much easier. And I'm all about things that makes you successful. So you're going to want to pick up one of these if you don't already have one. So once again, Quilter Select Fabric Glue Stick. Now, the other things that you're going to want to have is for your machine, you're going to have 2 different pieces. 2 different feet to piece with. So this one is our applique foot, and you'll notice that it has a nice open area here. Most machines have come with this. And the next one is probably my favorite foot for my machine. It's the 1/4 inch piecing foot with the flange. So both of these are going to make it easier and your sewing more successful. And then the next thing is probably the most important for foundation paper piecing. When you do foundation paper piecing, you're actually sewing your fabric onto a piece of paper. So with that said, what I do every time I do it is I drop my stitch length down to 1.3 on my machine here. Now your machine, you may have different options. You may not be able to get to 1.3, but you're going to want to drop that stitch length down to a smaller size. And here's why. When you're sewing and you're done and you're ready to take the paper off of the blocks that I will be demoing, the sewing stitches will perforate the paper, and that makes it easier to get that paper off. So that's the number one reason to drop your stitch length down. The second one might be even more important than the first one. With your stitch length shorter, when you go to pull that paper, it's not going to distort your stitches. So if you have a longer stitch length and you pull the paper, your stitches become distorted and they can become wonky, and then you're not going to have a straight seam. So you're going to want to drop your stitch length down. And like I said, on my machine, I drop it to a 1.3. You can play around with your machine, see what works for you. But it's really important to do that for down the road once you get everything put together. You can sew with a regular stitch length and have no problems at all, but the main problem is going to be when you take that paper off, because you don't want to distort anything. So those are the tools and the different tricks. And to change your stitch length, each machine's different. On mine, if I just click here, I have this handy dandy little button here, and I'm just going to drop it down to 1.3. So it just took me a second and I'm set. Now I am well aware, everyone's got different machines, and everyone's machine is a little bit different. So you're going to want to go to your sewing machine manual, look it up, see how to drop your stitch length down. Some are, knobs and buttons, some are electronic. So just make sure to take the time and do a little research so that you can drop your stitch length down. Okay, so with that said, those are the tools. Let me switch my camera back and I'm going to jump into the demo. Okay, so let's talk about foundation paper piecing. First thing that I want to show you is this wonderful product. This is the Quilt Block foundation paper made by It's So Emma. It makes a 12-inch block, and this one here is called the Economy Plus. This is the one I'm going to be demoing today. So with that said, I'm going to pull out one of the papers. You'll see that it's a special paper. It's It's a little bit thinner, so it's thinner than regular like copy paper size. And the first thing that I like to do is I have gone ahead and pre-cut fabrics to size. In the actual book here, let me show you real quick. It has all these instructions. So I'm not going to go over the obvious things, but in there it will tell you here, whoops, your cutting sizes. So it gives you the instructions for cutting and where to go from there. So I'm not going to show you anything that's already in the instructions. What I'm going to show you is my tips and tricks. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to see this foundation paper and it's all numbered. So we're going to do fabric piece number 1, which I have gone ahead and grabbed this red. And what you're going to do is on the opposite side where you see the lines, I am going to use my glue stick and I'm going to add some glue to the paper. And then I'm going to take my fabric and simply smooth it onto the paper. So now that it is stuck on there, okay? And then the next thing that I do is I take my fabric and my paper and I fold it. Now I am folding it on the lines, you'll see, where I'm going to sew. So I'm going to now turn it over to the back side. I'm going to sew on that black line. So in order to do that, to make sure nothing gets out of shape, is I'm going to take my pins real quick and I'm going to pin on either side. So you can see barely that I have the fold line there. I will turn it over now and I just double check, make sure that everything went where it needs to go. Keep in mind my stitch length has been dropped to 1.3 and I'm simply going to sew, and I start a few stitches before the line and that helps to keep everything aligned. And then let me put up my speed real quickly. I'm going to stitch a couple stitches over, cut, and then you'll see that I have that stitch line. You're going to take out your pins. The next thing I do, and it's a little bit of back and forth, is I take that paper and I fold it on the crease line, put it onto my mat on the other side, and then I'm going to take my add a quarter and I simply butt up to the seam, and with my rotary cutter, I cut that fabric away, and you'll see it is a perfect 1/4 inch now away from the seam. So I'm going to repeat the process, and I'm going to go to the opposite side, fold my paper back, add a crease, open it up, add a pin on each side. Now keep in mind the pins are not going to be anywhere near I'm sewing. They're just to keep the fabric kind of to behave so it doesn't go where it's not supposed to. And once again, I start a few stitches before the line. And just like that, stop a few stitches after, cut, and repeat the process. Now, once you get this going, this goes pretty fast. You're going to then fold your fabric. You can cut that off, and you'll see where we're going with this. Now, what I want to show you is how to add fabric number 2, which is this point here. So I've gone ahead, like I said, I think my fabric fell. Let me grab it real quick. And I have just some scrap fabric, and I'm going to take this and once again add a crease, take my fabric right sides together, line it up, pin, turn it over, align it in, double check to make sure nothing got wonky, and then start a few stitches before the line, and then a few stitches over. Okay, take it over, remove the pins, take your fabric, fold it back, put it on your cutting mat once again, and I'm trying to make sure that I place it to where you can see. And now, once again, I'm going to line that ruler up, use my rotary cutter. And now what I want to do is I want to use my iron and iron open. Let me see if I can do this on camera. I'm going to move my machine back a little bit so I can put this here so you guys can see. Okay, so then I basically just take it, fold that fabric open, iron it down, and there you go. So I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Fold the fabric up. And this is the tip that helped make me more successful with my foundation paper piecing, was that I started folding my fabric so I knew exactly where it is to place the fabric. When I first started doing this, I was kind of guesstimating where the fabric should go. And sometimes I would, I would hit or miss. And that's, I think, where some people get frustrated, is when you think you're sewing something perfectly and then you go back through and it's not. So with folding the fabric, it helps me to make sure that everything is aligned and exactly where it should be. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. Once again, take my pins off. And then I'm going to fold this fabric back. Fold the paper back to expose that seam line. Take it over. Rotary cut the extra fabric away. And then I'm going to use the little ironing mat and fold that fabric up and iron it flat. And 1 second, I'll bring it to you. So now I've got two sides down. And let me go ahead and do the other two real quick. I wish we had like a fast motion type thing, but you just keep going continually until you get all the pieces done. And it's as simple as that. Making sure that you line everything up. Pinning is going to be your best friend. And keep in mind, I like to cut my foundation paper piecing fabric longer and bigger, because I have been there where I've done some foundation paper piecing and the next thing I know, it's not quite enough fabric, and that's really frustrating. So now what I do is I fold the paper before I lay it down, and that way I'm sure exactly where it needs to go. So once again, fold my fabric, my paper back. Let me get my add a quarter, and I'm going to trim that up. Get the extra pieces away. Using my little travel iron. Iron that fabric flat. Now I've got 3 sides, and I've got 1 more to go real quick. And then that first part will be done. So, once again, repeating the process. And this is why I think it's so relaxing for me. Is, like I said, I don't have to think. I kind of just go into motion, and I know what needs to be done next. And I just get into a system where, I stitch, I cut, I iron, I fold the fabric and the paper, and then repeat, so to speak. So it's just so relaxing for me. And one of the things that I love is that I tend to use a lot of scraps when I do my foundation paper piecing. But you don't have to. I think I tend to use a lot of scraps because when I get to the point where my scrap bins are too full, I think, okay, well, I need to make something real quick and I got to use my scraps. And I think what the thing is I always go to foundation paper piecing. That's how much I love it. I love to be able to use my scraps in a creative way. And foundation paper piecing does that. So with this next part here, you'll see I've now sewn completely around this block number 1. I've added fabric 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now I'm going to go to number 6. In number 6, I'm going to once again fold on that line. And I'm going to bring it over to show you real quick. So when I say fold on the line, you see that I've folded on this line here, which is to add this piece here for block 6. Okay, and that way when I turn it over to the other side, look, I can see exactly where I need to place my fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down, and I'm going to grab my fabric that I'm adding. I'm going to line it up and add my pins and turn it over again, because you have to turn it over to know the side where you're sewing. Make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And then, which side am I doing? And then I'm going to sew on that black line. Once again, starting a few stitches before the line and a few stitches over. Hit my thread cutter. I'm going to bring it over, show you. So you can see I've sewn a few stitches before this line, a few stitches after. I'm going to once again remove my pins. Take that fabric, fold it back the other direction. And what that does is it exposes all this fabric that you're going to need to cut. Now I'm going to put it on my cutting mat. Take my add a quarter, line it up, trim that extra fabric away, and once again, a 1/4 inch cut away from the paper. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Then I'm going to take it and open that fabric, iron it open, and I'm going to show you this point. Look at that. Precision. Let me do this one more time. So, with it open, I'm going to go to number 7 now. I am creasing that paper. And what that paper does is it allows on the other side, it's creased the fabric and the paper, so I know exactly where to align my next piece of fabric. Fabric number 7. Place it down, add your pins, and then you're going to turn it over again to sew. A few stitches before the line, a few stitches after. Go ahead and hit your thread cut. Take out your pins. And then fold your paper back. And on your rotary cutter, you're going to cut that extra fabric away using your add a quarter ruler. Once again, whoops, got a little extra. You can see that I have a perfect 1/4 inch cut mark away from that seam. That's why that add a quarter ruler is so amazing. Let me see if I bring it here, I can show you. So it just kind of locks into place, and then you lay it there, and then you use this side and you use your rotary cutter to cut. It's just wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to open this one up. And once again, your points are perfect. So that's it. That's the technique. I will go ahead and finish this one to show you what the finished block looks like. So that's how you actually are going to be doing the foundation paper piecing. The glue stick is perfect for keeping that first piece in place. Now, when you're working with a 12-inch foundation paper piece, it's a big piece of paper. Some of the other ones that I'll show you in just a minute are smaller, but either one, that very first piece of fabric that you put down, it's so helpful to have this fabric glue stick to make sure that it sticks there. That way you don't have to worry about it shifting and getting out of the way. Now you could use this to put all your fabrics down, but I like using the pins. So that's it. That's the technique. Let me switch back to my other camera real quick, and I am going to show you some product and also some samples. Okay, so now that you know how to foundation paper piece, let me show you some cool things. So this is the It's So Emma Pineapple Foundation Paper Pack. I love these, and when I was doing research, when I ran across these, I went, this is going to make it so much easier for everyone else out there to do foundation paper piecing too. So this one's the pineapple, and let me show you. This is a block that I made, and on the back you can see, but look at those points, look at the precision. And then I want to show you, look at this quilt I made. So the quilt is all with the foundation paper piecing, and it's with the 6-inch pineapple block. I love it. This one I used my scraps, but I did do something a little bit technical. Is on one of them I added black so that it looks like there is a detail to it. So it's kind of an organized scrappy quilt, but this is the 6-inch foundation paper piecing, and this pattern is the pineapple pattern. Let me show you another one. So we have the pineapple in the 6-inch, but we also have a 12-inch It's So Emma foundation paper piecing pineapple. And let me get the block out. There's the sample block I made of that, and so much fun. Now each of these comes with 42 sheets, so you can make a pretty good size quilt with them. And let me show you what I made with it. This is a sample quilt I made with the pineapple block. I also used another block that I'm going to show you in a second, the flying geese. So this one is not scrappy. I actually picked the fabrics and laid them out accordingly. So this is the 12-inch It's So Emma pineapple block. And here's the flying geese. So I know some people really struggle with flying geese. So this is another way to do them. These flying geese make 2x4. You will make a block like this, and you simply cut it in half, and that way you have 2 flying geese. How cool is that? So this is the It's So Emma flying geese foundation paper piecing patterns. And then we have the sample that I was working on before was the economy block. And I went ahead and I finished a sample block for that too. Whoops, let me pull that up. So that's the sample block. And let me show you a quilt I made. So this one is the economy block. And once again, it's 12-inch blocks finished. And I did it, I just coordinated it with my new paint in my sewing room downstairs. So this is the economy block. So with that said, you're going to want to make sure that you go to our landing page and click on the link when you log in to watch the More Sewing with Michele. And you can purchase those different foundation paper packets as well as the Add a Quarter 12-inch or the Add a Quarter 6, and don't forget the Quilter Select glue stick. And that's it. That's foundation paper piece. The mystery has been dissolved. Hopefully you've all fallen in love. It's precision, and it's so relaxing. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's my go-to pleasure when I need to just sit and relax and do some quilting. I love foundation paper piecing. I hope you will too. And so thank you once again for joining me for More Sewing with Michele. Check out the link, and you can purchase the products that I've shown you here today. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Everyone be safe out there. Bye-bye. See you next Monday.